Coercive control is a type of domestic abuse that can have a devastating psychological effect on those impacted. It's a non-violent form of control which is used to frighten and dominate a partner, whether male or female. It was made illegal at the end of 2015 and is punishable by up to 5 years in jail. Nearly 2 years after the law was introduced, police figures show more people are being arrested on suspicion of coercive and controlling behaviour, but only 1 in 6 is charged with the offence. Why? Let's talk now to Lisa Marie Flavin, who says she experienced coercive control at the hands of her ex-partner. Emma Pearmain is here. Emma is a family lawyer and a campaigner for the survivors of domestic abuse. And David Tuck is here. He's the head of Crime and Criminal Justice faculty at the College of Policing. Welcome, all of you. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. Lisa Marie, thank you for talking to us. I wonder if you could explain to our audience what it feels like to be in a relationship with someone who controls you.
I mean, coercive and controlling behaviour is the foundation for every other type of abuse. Let's be real about this. You know, to be controlled and abused, it leads on to other types of abuse. It makes you feel, I mean, you're at the power of somebody else. It's a slow trickle of a process to be controlled and coerced by someone. It happens very slowly, but then the magnitude of what it can do to the impact on your mental health is extreme. How did it begin with your ex then? I mean, it began very slowly. You know, it was difficult for me to see friends. You know, it would come in an argument, or I would make plans, and then he would be like, "Oh, you know, don't go, stay with me." That turned into then, if you loved me, you wouldn't go. You don't need friends. You know, you've got me. And then it turned into, you know, he would destroy my mobile phones, pull them out of the wall. I was in the bath one time, and he threw my phone in the bath. I wouldn't have contact with the outside world. You know, Facebook became impossible. He would question everyone that I knew on there, you know, and then it went on to things like, you know, I would leave and I would go to stay with family. He slashed the roof of my car, I now know, and he, you know, made out somebody did it in my family's home. So I wasn't safe to be with my family. I had to go back home to him, you know. Yeah.
Some people will think that it can't, however distressing that is, and it is, because you become powerless in the end, will still think it can't be as traumatic as being physically beaten up. What would you say to them?
Oh, I mean, it absolutely is. At the time, I didn't realise what was happening to me. That sounds insane. You know, I don't see myself as unintelligent. You don't realise you're being abused. You know, they've got you in such a way, you know the real them. They've got a good heart. You know, they've just got a few issues and anger. You know, I realised I was depressed long before I realised I was being abused. It really does have a detrimental impact on your mental health.
Well, tell us about that then. How did that manifest itself in you?
Oh, you know, I've always been a bubbly, you know, social person, happy-go-lucky. You know, and I was trying to hide the abuse. You know, you'd say things like, oh, you know, don't tell people our business. You know, it's between me and you. He would gaslight, you know, things like we'd have you know, something would happen the night before and the next day, oh, that was nothing, you were being too sensitive, you know. And I went from this bubbly character to a shell, an absolute shell of my former self. Wow. I didn't want to go out. It was just not worth the hassle, you know. I was so afraid. I was walking on eggshells. I was caught in this cycle of abuse, you know, being bombarded with love and then bombarded with hate and abuse. I was frightened. You know, you're trapped in this world, just you and this person, and it's amazing how it takes a grip on you.
You've described it so eloquently. I know your ex-partner was charged with coercive behaviour. In the end, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of harassment without violence. That was accepted by the Crown Prosecution Service.
Correct, yes.
But how important to you was it that the police were able to understand and recognise the controlling behaviour that you say had gone on?
I mean, because this is a relatively new legislation, you know, as we know, it came out in December 2015, the local police that dealt with my case, unfortunately, hadn't been trained in coercive control. I know this is looking to change, which is absolutely necessary, you know. I was lucky, I was made aware of the law by some friends of mine who were in a different police force. And it was just, you know, when I read about coercive control, everything just rang true.
Yeah.
Everything he was doing to me, it was just, wow, this is happening to me. There's a name for what's happening to me.
I'm going to bring in Emma Pearmain. You've done a Freedom of Information request to every police force in England to compile these figures on arrests and charges for coercive control in the first 18 months of this new legislation. And there is a lot of variation. In some areas, more than a third of arrests result in charges. In others, it's much smaller percentage. Why do you think there is that variation?
I think there are a number of issues, actually. I'm involved with a domestic violence charity, the Corporate Alliance, and we have been invited to a number of police forces to deliver training on coercive control. And that's been very useful for the police officers involved. And I am assured by all police forces that they are taking training for their frontline officers very seriously, and they are delivering training. And I think we can see from the difference in the number of arrests made in the first half of 2016 to the number of arrests made in the first half of 2017 that police officers are now very much more aware of the issues of coercive control and much more able to recognise it.
But yet only 1 in 6 of those arrests leads to a charge.
Still only 1 in 6.
Why might that be the case? And then I'll ask you, David, obviously.
Sure. Well, there are very challenging evidential issues that the police and the Crown Prosecution Service have to deal with, and we have to accept that. There has to be an element of repeated behaviour that has to be evidenced. It has to be seen that the victim has experienced fear and adapted their behaviour as a result. And we also have to be able to see that the perpetrator or alleged perpetrator knew effectively that their behaviours would result in the victim feeling fear. And actually that's a very difficult thing to prove. Very difficult.
I mean, you know, Lisa Marie talked about her mobile phone being smashed or chucked into the bath, or the top of her car being slashed. You know, that you can see the physical outcome of that happening, but you know, don't go on Facebook, don't go out, don't talk to them. That's much harder to prove, isn't it, David?
Yes, it is, and policing, of course, was set up and over decades has dealt with the manifestations of issues, so the slashing of the car or the damage to mobile phones. And what we're asking police officers to do now is to understand much more about the incident that they're dealing with, and that's quite a change in culture, particularly for frontline officers. And so we're hearing that training is taking place. There's training that the College of Policing does and mandates that is made available for police forces.
Made available?
So they don't have to do it? Yeah, we set the standards around training, and we make training available, and forces can either use our products or use their own. And very often it's an appropriate thing for forces to use their own training products because they might have their own structures in place locally. But we work at the College of Policing with the National Policing Lead, senior officer who leads for the police service on the operational response, to make sure that the messages around coercive and controlling behaviour get through to the front line. And as we're hearing, that's being effective. Well,
effective in some forces. I mean, do you link the number of arrests that leads to a charge in coercive control with training? I mean, can we make that link?
Well, I think it's important to see that this is not just a policing issue, that there is a whole system that works together. So we work very closely with the National Policing Lead, but we also work with the Inspectorate of Constabulary and the Home Office, the Ministry of Justice and so on, and with the Crown Prosecution Service. And what we have to do is that the policing job is to collect the evidence. We then present that to the CPS, and the Crown Prosecution Service will make a decision about whether a case can go forward, whether the evidence is there. And there are changes.
I understand that. I mean, I think most people watching understand you collect the evidence, you put it forward to the CPS, they decide if a charge goes forward or is brought. My question is, maybe, Emma, you can help me here. Are you seeing in the data that you've looked at, there are more arrests leading to charges in areas where the police have taken up the training?
Yes, we are. Certainly so within the sector of domestic violence, absolutely. We recognise it in terms of the clients that we represent day in, day out across the country as family lawyers. And I see it in my role working with the Corporate Alliance Against Domestic Violence. And those forces where we are invited to attend and deliver training, we can see that statistics for those forces are actually very positive, and they are increasing in terms of the number of arrests. And actually there is a very small increase in terms of the number of charges.
Yeah.
So we're doing. So the College of Policing has a product that we deliver with a number of charities, And we have evaluated that and looked at the impact, and we know that that training has an impact on the attitudes and the learning of the individuals. What we can't prove is that you can then see a change in the number of arrests and the number of charges. Understood. Because that would require a much longitudinal study.
Fair enough. I mean, they are really interesting, the figures. Data from 35 police forces in England show that in the first 18 months of the new law, there were 4,000 arrests for coercive control, but only 17% were charged with the offence. By comparison, a decision to charge was made for 70% of domestic abuse-related cases referred to the CPS by the police. That's according to the ONS. So it's just interesting to compare at this stage. Lisa Marie, I know you wrote a very moving impact statement after your case went to court. Tell our audience what you told the judge.
Sorry, you broke up then. What did you say?
Tell our audience about the impact statement you gave to the court.
Well, you know, I sort of addressed the judge, the barristers. I know there's a lot of good work going on down at the ground level, you know, with coercive control. People need to be educated, people need to know it's a law. But if the, people at the top, the judges, the courts, don't recognise the seriousness of this type of abuse, then everything else that's going on down in the ground is fruitless. We need to raise awareness. I also addressed the perpetrator in court. I addressed that the outcome did not affect what had happened between us. We knew the truth. I did have a catalogue of evidence, eyewitness testimonies, voice recordings. It really needs to be taken more seriously. It was to read it out in court was empowering.
Yeah. That's it. Good to hear, actually. This tweet from DV, well done to Lisa Marie, talking on your programme today. So brave to talk so openly about coercive and controlling behaviour. Being abused by control just becomes your new normal, and you don't see that anything is wrong. No. You're so consumed, and it's a scary cycle of abuse. What advice would you give to anyone watching right now who is hearing you describe this morning, Lisa Marie, and is thinking, hang on a minute, I think I might be in a similar situation?
I mean, let's not forget, no human being has the right to control another. Not in any circumstances, not in any way. None of us should live in fear of someone we love. When it's just the two of you in a relationship or, with a family, it can become the norm, this sort of behaviour, but it's not. It's not a healthy relationship. Nobody has the right to control another. Seek advice. I was silenced by fear and abuse for a long time. And when I started, sort of disclosing to my colleagues and my friends, when they saw the difference in me, it was then that it became clear, as time's gone on, that, wow, this is a thing that's happening to me. There's a name for it. Yeah.
And would you say, just call the police?
Call the police. You may be met, I was lucky, I was met with some really supportive officers. Obviously, they didn't pick up the coercive control, but they did pick up, the harassment. And I was lucky I had support from friends, and I got to, read up on coercive control and, report it to the police. This is a serious thing, and the law is here to protect us.
Thank you very much, Lisa Marie. Really appreciate your time on the programme today. Thank you, Lisa Marie Flavin, who says she experienced coercive control at the hands of her ex-partner, Emma Pearmain, thank you, family lawyer, and David Tucker from the College of Policing. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. Still to come, North Korea boasts of